Hello. Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Once upon a time, on the edge of a big dark forest, there lived a girl called Goldilocks. You've probably heard of her. If so, you will know these three things. She was small. Her hair was all golden curls, and she looked like one of those very good children who never ever seem to get into trouble for anything. Well, the truth is, Goldilocks did get into trouble. Quite a lot, in fact. Not because she was bad, but because her curiosity always got the better of her. Now, a little curiosity can be a wonderful thing, but too much and you have trouble. And Goldilocks had a little more than too much. Her mother often worried about letting Goldilocks out of her sight, so sometimes the little girl would ask just one too many questions and stick her fingers into one too many pots of honey and peek under the lid of one too many saucepans. And her mother, unable to bear it any longer, would send her out to collect firewood. This was just such a morning as Goldilocks slipped through the gate. Her mother called after her, "Remember these three things. Don't stray from the path. Be back in time for breakfast. And whatever you do, make sure you look after your little red shoes." "Oh, I will, Mother," called Goldilocks, and she meant it. Well, the bit about her little red shoes, anyway. Off Goldilocks skipped, picking a flower here and looking down a rabbit hole there, lifting up pebbles and peering into tree trunks. But all the while she remembered her mother's words, and she stuck to the path. Well, at least until she saw a little blue bird picking up a snow-white feather and flying off into the trees. "Ooh," thought Goldilocks, "I wonder where he's going with that feather." She couldn't help herself, and she ran through the forest after him. She was so intent on following the bird that she didn't notice how far she had run or how thick the trees had become, until the little bird was long gone and the path was well and truly lost. Goldilocks stood all alone in the middle of the forest. All Goldilocks could hear were the leaves rustling and the birds cheeping and, well, something buzzing. "I wonder who's making all that noise," she thought, and she followed the buzzing until she came to a clearing where the sun shone down, and there, right in the middle of the trees, stood a curious wooden cottage, and next to it 3 little wooden beehives, each of them surrounded by lots of bees. "How strange to find a cottage right in the middle of the forest. I wonder why I've never seen this cottage before," thought Goldilocks, stretching up to peep into the tiny glass window. She had to stand on tiptoe, and even though she couldn't quite see, she climbed up onto a flower pot and her shoes got all muddy. "Dear," said Goldilocks, "I said I would look after my little red shoes. Perhaps whoever lives in this house would help me clean them." She knocked on the door. There was no answer, so she peeped through the keyhole. "No one would mind if I had a look. I wouldn't mind if it were my house." So she turned the handle and slipped inside. "Hello," called out Goldilocks. "Hello, hello." But no one answered, and Goldilocks smiled because she secretly hoped no one would be in. "What a tidy little room," said Goldilocks out loud, and as she said so, she bumped into a bucket of apples which tumbled onto the floor. She didn't have a chance to pick them up because something curious caught her eyes. "How strange," she said, stepping over the apples. "There seem to be 3 of everything. There are 1, 2, 3 chairs, 1, 2, 3 bowls, 1, 2, 3 spoons, and so 1, 2, 3 people must live in this little house." Well, she was almost right. You see, the tiny cottage did not belong to 1, 2, 3 people, but surprisingly, if you don't already know, 1, 2, 3 bears. A large father bear, a middle-sized mother bear, and a small baby bear. I know it's strange to have bears living in a little wooden cottage, but this is a fairy tale and strange things happen in fairy tales. Every morning the 3 bears liked to go for a little walk before breakfast. It really gave them an appetite, and it also gave their porridge a chance to cool down. Bears do not like to burn their tongues. The bears never bothered to lock their front door, because who would walk into the bear's house uninvited? Well, the answer is someone who didn't know it was a bear's house. Their porridge smelt very good, and Goldilocks was feeling hungry. And she looked at the table, and she looked at the door, and she looked at the porridge. One little taste would not be so bad. They won't even notice. Not a taste from this large bowl. And picking up the biggest spoon, she dipped it into the biggest bowl. Ouch, said Goldilocks, too hot. Maybe this middle-sized bowl might be nicer. Ooh, no, Goldilocks said. It's too cold. How can anyone eat cold porridge? Perhaps if I just tried this little smaller bowl, that might be better. And it was. In fact, it was just right. In fact, it was so just right that she had another bite and another until, oh dear, it was all gone. Whoops, said Goldilocks. Well, never mind. There are 2 more bowls. They can share. I would share if it were my porridge. Said Goldilocks, looking around the house. I wouldn't mind a little sit down. I feel rather full. What a big chair. I would like to sit on that chair. But she didn't like it at all. Too tall, too wobbly. Well, maybe I will sit on the middle-sized chair. She sat down with a thud. Ouch! Too low. Well, that small chair is sweet and more my size, said Goldilocks as she sat down on the smallest chair. Oh, this is just perfect for me. But it wasn't, and the chair broke into 3 pieces. Oh dear, said Goldilocks. Well, it was an accident. I don't suppose anyone would mind if they knew it was an accident. As Goldilocks picked herself up off the floor, she caught sight of the twisty wooden stairs. Stairs. I wonder why I didn't notice those before. The answer is because she was too busy eating other people's porridge and breaking other people's furniture to have possibly noticed the little staircase winding through the house. Now I wonder what is up there, she whispered. Well, I think she knew very well what was up there, because most people do. You see, Goldilocks just wanted to see for herself. And so she climbed the stairs 3 at a time, snagging her stripy woolen tights as she went. I am sure you will not be surprised to hear that at the top of the stairs she found a bedroom, and in that bedroom were 3 neatly made beds. What a dear little room, she said, looking around. If it were my house, I would sleep in that big bed. But it wasn't as comfortable as it looked. Oh, too hard, complained Goldilocks. You would think she would have learned by now. Well, maybe this middle-sized bed will be more bouncy, and it was. But it was too bouncy and made her feel a little dizzy. Too soft. I suppose that this little bed might be the one for me. And as I'm sure you already guessed, it was. Oh yes, just right, said Goldilocks, slipping under the covers. I'm so terribly, terribly sleepy. Maybe I will lie down just for 3 minutes. I'd better take my shoes off though, she said, noticing the mud that she'd quite forgotten to clean off. So Goldilocks carefully placed her little red shoes neatly by the side of the bed and fell soundly asleep. When the 3 bears came back from their walk, they were very, very hungry. They sniffed the air, but it wasn't porridge they could smell. You see, Bears have very keen noses, and right away they could smell something very different. Sniff, sniff, sniff. They looked around. Father Bear noticed at once that something was quite wrong. Things are not as they should be, said Father Bear, picking up an apple. Father Bear walked over to the table and looked into his bowl. He picked up his spoon. Who's been eating my porridge? Said Mother Bear. Who's been eating my porridge? Oh, said Small Bear. Who's been eating my porridge? And look, they gobbled it all up. A large tear welled up in Small Bear's eye and rolled down his little face. He was a very sensitive type and was also very fond of porridge. Father Bear looked around to see if he could see where the greedy, whoever it was, greedy person might be. But what he saw was his chair, and he wasn't too pleased. Who's been sitting in my chair? Father Bear did not like people sitting in his chair. Mother Bear looked at her chair and was not very pleased either. Who's been sitting in my chair? And Small Bear was the least pleased of them all because he no longer even had a chair. Who's been sitting in my chair? And look, they've broken it all to pieces. Mother Bear looked around and what she saw was a thread of black wool winding up the stairs. Things are not as they should be, said Mother Bear, picking up the end of the woolen thread. The three bears started to climb the stairs. Creak, creak, creak. But Goldilocks did not stir, not even a lock of her golden hair. So soundly was she sleeping. When the bears got to the top of the stairs, they listened carefully. Bears have very sensitive ears, but all they could hear was a tiny, tiny sound, almost like the sound of a sleeping mouse. Father Bear looked at his bed. Who's been sleeping in my bed? He snarled. Mother Bear looked at her bed. The quilt was all ruffled and the pillow was unplumped. Who's been sleeping in my bed? She growled. Well, whispered Baby Bear, who's been sleeping in my bed? And, by the way, look, they are still here. And all the three bears peered at the sleeping girl lying in the small bear's bed. Growl, growl, growl. And exactly then Goldilocks woke from her slumber to see three differently sized bears staring down at her. Now, Goldilocks was a curious girl, but she wasn't curious enough to strike up a conversation with bears. Oh, no, no, no. Goldilocks sprang from the bed and quick as quick jumped out of the tiny open window. Happily for her, it wasn't too big a drop, and she ran and she ran and she ran as fast as she could back to her cottage at the edge of the forest. I can tell you her mother wasn't too pleased because she had missed breakfast. Not that Goldilocks minded, because she was still quite full with porridge, and she was so relieved to be home in one piece that she didn't even mind being sent to her room. But she had forgotten two little things. 2 little red shoes. When her mother realised, she was extremely cross, as you can imagine, and Goldilocks was very sad because she loved her little red shoes. But Small Bear, well, he was very happy indeed. Mother Bear made him some more porridge, Father Bear mended his chair, and Small Bear had an almost brand new pair of little red shoes to wear when he went for his walk before breakfast. And Small Bear looked after them very carefully indeed. I think that's a lovely version of traditional tale, and I hope you enjoyed it too. Bye for now.